Blessings, Lenny.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing good, sir. I'll jump on here in a second. We'll get everybody else just in the kitchen.
All right.
Thank you.
Yep.
Hey, Don. Hello.
Hey guys.
Hey, Don. Hi, Lenny.
Hello.
So, Lenny, I believe the two of you crossed paths. I'll let Don talk about it. I don't know if you guys have connected since our
No,
initial. Lenny,
no, I
Don,
have
Don, Lenny.
Lenny. I know of your company very well. I did all kinds of great things with TVS and CNN. I was at Sony at the time in the '90s and late 2000s, and Ted Turner, Larry Goodman, Richard Chamberlain, all those guys from media to did the Goodwill games in St. Petersburg. We provided all the professional Sony equipment, and I had a blast. That was, I was young and got to see everything. Did the '96 Olympics. We actually put the jumbotron on the outside of your building there, right in that little square. Had a blast, but I don't think we ever crossed paths. I'm not sure, but you probably know some of those characters. It was
Yeah,
a good
I
time.
I I got there in '96,
Oh,
right at the Olympics.
oh,
I
cool.
wasn't
Yeah,
there for St. Petersburg, but I was every other Goodwill games and
yeah. Well, I'll tell you, we did all the Super Bowls. We did the NFL experience. We did Super Bowls, but CNN was a big
yeah,
customer of ours, as well as TBS, because back then they kind of were both, right? TBS and
yeah.
CNN
You knew
crossed
you
a little
knew
bit. Larry, go ahead.
you knew Dan Darling, Joe
No,
Wheeler.
I don't. I didn't know him. I was on the sponsorship and events side of the business and the
Oh,
marketing side,
gotcha.
not in the sales guy. He would probably know John Scarcella and all the people who sold the jumbotrons and the
Yeah,
screens and that kind of stuff.
exactly.
But
Cool.
I was the marketing guy. I wish I was the sales guy. I would have made some good commission. But I was the marketing guy reporting into the CMO there at Sony
I
Electronics.
wanted, I was going to add too, Lenny, when Don and I first met, similar calls like you and I have had, he was trying to wrap his head around what I was doing and, education. Oh, here's Larry too. Education's been first and foremost. So, that's the focus of today. I'm not going to talk a lot, believe it or not. I want to let the rest of the family here kind of have time with you and vice versa. So as soon as Will gets on, we'll start. I think Larry believe that's either Larry Franco or Larry Witherspoon.
Larry Witherspoon, how you doing now?
Hey, Larry. Blessings, brother.
You too.
Lenny, Larry, Larry, Lenny.
Nice to meet you, Lenny.
Nice to meet you too.
Mhm.
And Lenny, Larry is who founded and created Connect to Your City. So it's our already live streaming platform with the ability to take that up even further. So these are the key components that are going to make all this tick and work. And Connect to Your City was actually incubated at Jackson State. Yes, Larry?
Yeah, absolutely. In the East End. Yeah.
Very cool.
So crossover connections with Piney Woods, same space. And here's Will, the other Will. Ah, Mr. Crossley.
Hey, I apologize. I need a new uh computer in my so I'm on my iPad. I
Lenny, Will, Lenny, and I'm gonna jump off video for a little bit and just let you guys do your thing, get to know each other. And um, Lenny, as I've said, every time we communicated, funding's not the issue. It's so there's a path. Will and I met with Larry Franco last April, and we partnered to do all this. And then that's when I went off and put all this together. And the final piece of that for the education is the college component side. That's where Don and I have also connected, and that's the purpose of this call. So it's not about movies. God bless. Thank you.
Maybe it's not about movies, but it's always about the story, right? It's the stories that move us, and Will, your story is by itself a compelling one, and so appreciate you for seeing fit to connect us. Let me see. Have I lost you?
No, I'm here. I'm here. I'm just staying off
Oh,
video
gotcha.
and letting you
No
guys
worries.
talk.
No worries. Lenny, good to meet you. Good to meet you.
Very nice to meet you too.
Glad I didn't have homework, because I would have had to bring an excuse.
Yeah, I haven't done homework in a while.
And so Will is giving me a little bit of background of some of what you've done, and I think you're in Atlanta, if I'm not mistaken, and I have lived in Atlanta some years ago. This is going way back. I was a program. I was in administration of Governor Zell Miller way back in the 90s, and life has twisted and turned quite a bit since then, and now, of all places, I'm in rural Mississippi. So but good to meet you and good to talk with you.
Nice to meet you too. Thank you. Thanks for taking the time. Does it make sense for me to give you a little bit of background of where I am?
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, maybe you can share a little bit of your own background, introduction,
Yeah,
and kind of what you're thinking about, and I'm happy to do the same.
that'd be great. Yeah. So television my whole life. I went to FIU. I never did graduate, but I attended FIU, grew up in Miami. Ended up working at NBC for years, ESPN for years, and the last 30 years at Turner Broadcasting, and then ran Turner Broadcasting for this last 7 or 8 years. And I'm fast forwarding through a lot of things in between there. But the short of it is, after getting bought by Discovery, there was an opportunity for me to move on, which I took, and decided, trying to decide what I wanted to do next. So I was in non-competes, non-solicits, all that kind of stuff for years. And finally, those things are expiring, and I'm deciding really what I want to do. Like, do I want to do the same thing, get back into the game, which is the easiest thing, and there are opportunities out there, and I'm deciding whether I want to do that or do something very different, and so on and so forth. One of the things that really does interest me, and I think the reason for this is youth sports, to me, is fascinating. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry that is a complete disaster. I have a 16-year-old and a 20-year-old, but a 16-year-old who's playing sports all day long, and it's just it's the amount of money and all the other stuff that goes. It's a mess. And I've been talking to Lake Point Sports. I don't know if you're familiar. That's one of the biggest travel facilities, 1,300 acres. It's real estate and sports, and it's on a lake, and it's right up 75 here, and on and on and on. They're going through a process of getting sold, and I had talked to them. I've been talking to them about doing something with them and just trying to get into the youth sports space. And I'll tell you, the thing that really made me think this way, aside from my kids and seeing how messed up it really is when I was at Turner, obviously we did the March Madness deal. We had brought a couple of people that I work with, that I still work with, brought people from the Obama Foundation in Chicago to one of the events that we had. And it was about 6 kids. And I will never forget, this was years ago, that we're in there doing March Madness. They are in there. None of them had ever traveled. They've never been out of Chicago. This was a massive experience. They'd never gotten on a plane. They very smart, very articulate, very great kids. And they just never been exposed to anything. And so I sat with them for like an hour, ended up being hours. And it was just a great conversation. But the gist of it was, these kids did not know, because they were never exposed, that they could be involved in sports unless they played or coached. that's it, player coach, or go, do something that doesn't excite them or doesn't feed their passions. And I was like, there's got to be something more. There's got to be a way to get these kids to understand, like I did, that there are many opportunities inside of sports, and it all starts with youth sports. So if you go back to Lake Point, where they have 3 million kids a year coming through this place, you could expose a lot of different types of kids to sports and get them to understand, there is more. Now, yeah, pursue your passion. You want to be LeBron, go for it. But chances are you're going to have to figure something else out. And there are ways to do it, and there are lots of opportunities. So as we started talking more about that, the connection between teaching, creating some kind of a school that makes sense in today's world versus going to a traditional college, which I'm not against or anything, but you go to a traditional college and you walk out with a piece of paper. And, when I was at Turner, that's fine. That doesn't mean I'd hire you. I'd rather have somebody who's actually produced 20 games or 50 games or done stuff. So at a sports facility where they have year-round stuff going on, you actually can produce the games. You actually can distribute the games. You could do the legal side of it. You could do all kinds of things. And there are no rights fees, and there are no impediments to making it happen, and so on. So to me, it was youth sports first, building around this incredible campus that they have, and you could actually create a program to teach kids. I don't know, I'm not in the education space like you, so profit, nonprofit, stuff. So we had a bunch of conversations on that. The reason Shaq's name came up and keeps coming up is interesting. There are two other people who left Turner when I left, who were my right-hand people. They're incredible. And then his agent, which I knew pretty well. And we started talking, on its own, this is a great idea, and I think it would work. And we were all talking about it, and you could expand it to beyond college. You could do the IMG Academy. You could do all kinds of different things with it. But, get somebody who lives in Atlanta, like Shaq, somebody who actually played the sports like him, and somebody who actually cares in an area that is not probably already encumbered by all of his agents, right? He's sold his rights away. He's done all kinds of stuff to make all his money and so on. And so this was about a year ago. We had a conversation with him. He's like, I'm all in. Let me know. This sounds like it's pretty cool. We'll go from there. I have not had the conversation with him since then. And these other people that I'm talking about are, we talk every day about various things. They're all getting different jobs and doing different things. But that was really the gist of the idea behind the youth sports driving education through exposure. And you could do so much more. You could get into professional, you can get into teaching high schools, you could create internships, you could do, and you can go on and on and on. And then you can expand the business side of it into other facilities around the country that make sense and so on. So that's where it all came from. When Will and I was talking about it, he seemed to have the same beliefs and I'd never met him at all. He sent me a message on LinkedIn and we started chatting, and it was all good. But then he brought up the facility you have and so on, and that's amazing. I understand it, but it's, to me, I don't. It would just be an interesting conversation. I'm not moving, number one, and it would be interesting to find out how you do it without the youth sports component. Because I believe that's the driver behind a lot of this, and so on and so forth. So anyway, so that's where I am, and I'm really listening on a listening tour, talking to a lot of people, trying to figure out what I personally want to do, if anything, to be honest with you, and go from there. So I'll stop.
No, that's awesome. And thank you for thank you for sharing. And you seem to be you seem to be spot on. Well, you mentioned IMG Academy, and it recently sold, I think, for like over $1 billion or something. And and it's one of the things that I've been fascinated with, and just sort of wondering about, even as we continue to do our work, because we are, first of all, so Piney Woods School, it's a historic African American program, getting young people into college, particularly, and we are, unlike most private schools, we are not tuition driven. As our families don't pay much to be here. All of them get either a partial or full scholarship. And we do have some parent fees and things that we ask because we want everybody to have some stake in the game. But it's a different model from that respect. And even with that different model, in fact, my wife was sharing with me a TikTok yesterday. There's a little documentary out on us that a person came from Los Angeles to do. It's not the story I would have told, but it's, we just sort of opened our doors and say, hey, come in, do what you want to do. We're very proud of who we are and what we do.
Right.
And they told a different story. I fought with them for months about, hey, why didn't you include this and that and the other? But in any event, people have been watching the thing. And a woman went on TikTok and she says, hey, has anybody heard about this Piney Woods place? Looks like it's in Mississippi, and it is not what I thought it was going to be. And you see the comments that flowed from it. And one of the comments that kept coming up was this idea that, we're private, and so we must be too expensive, and people are not going to be able to afford to come. And I mean, there were all of these kind of, elitist kind of sort of notions about who we are, what we do, which is completely not who we are. We are the most accessible and the sort of most affordable. I'd say to families, money is not going to be the reason you don't come. And I spend most of my time actually cultivating a donor community that makes this place possible and has for now 115 years. But what has been, to your point, what has been the sort of big wonder for me over some years of doing this work has been the sports piece of this, because even though we charge parents very little on that, and we're boarding, so all of our kids live here on the campus, right? We feed them, we house them, we take them all over the country to visit colleges and to see industry and all of that good stuff. And typically, our Mississippi kids are paying like a couple of $1,000s for a year in kind of administrative activities fees. And even our internationals are not paying full freight. But the interesting thing is parents will sort of push back on the cost for education piece. But anything having to do with sports, there is no questions asked. They're just like, okay, well, how much is it, right? And they just show. And so there is this interest and this fascination and this almost motivation that both the kids and the families and the parents have about having their children engage in sports. And so we've been actually considering that and looking at that, and actually we brought on a new athletic director here who's an alum of Piney Woods. Actually went to a couple of state championship basketball games with us, and but later went on to coach at the collegiate level, and actually was coaching at IMG for a few years as well. And so he comes out of having seen how some of that is happening, and we're looking at ways that we might use those incentives to get young people interested in what we're doing here. But I think the crossover, I think maybe what Will saw, certainly what I see as you're talking about your own experience, and as I think about the history of this place, Piney Woods, we do send kids to college. We're very proud of that. But Piney Woods is our learning program has been different really throughout our history, because it's always been, and you hear this in a lot of places now, experiential learning in this, but our work has always been learning by doing. It's always been, putting young people, elementary and adolescent, and we actually used to have a collegiate program. So it was a 2-year program, like a community college program here on campus. They call it junior college. We currently have it's a small program, but it's postgraduate program, basketball program. But but it's always been put them in the midst of what's happening, and there's something you learn in the doing of the thing, right? You could sit a kid in a classroom and give them a book, and have them go through and do all of that. But until they're actually in the midst of, implementing the thing, right? It doesn't fully connect.
Completely agree with that. You have to actually be put in the situation to feel it and get it.
Yeah. And so if you look at what we've done in the past, we've had thriving arts programs in the past with this group. Actually, I have this on my. It's an old album. The International Sweethearts of Rhythm. This is actually the first all girls interracial swing band, jazz band in the U.S. And they went on to tour nationally and internationally, and but they came up in the 30s and the 40s in Mississippi, right? when that was like, because we were still in the midst, at the height of Jim Crow racial segregation, right? And so but they were born here in this sort of unique way, and then they went on to succeed from that. We had here back in the 20s, started in the 20s and went through the 30s. It eventually disbanded, but it was a group called the Giant Collegians. And this was before integration of baseball. And so they actually would, it was actually kind of like a farm program for the Negro Leagues. And I know that they sent people to to Negro Leagues in Chicago, which I think was the Giants, if I'm not mistaken at the time, and then to Kansas City. I know we had some go there. So it was just sort of a fascinating thing. And so what this place at its sort of core, what this place has done is to try to give young people skills of entrepreneurship that they can use across a range of areas and professions. And so a lot of people see our agriculture program. We have about a 250-acre demonstration farm. And I actually have been reinvesting in that. But the farm is not like, it's not like farming just for people to pick cotton, right? We don't even grow cotton. So, but it's representative of this entrepreneurship. It's this notion that you can take raw materials, right? Like a plot of land and some wood and some wire, and you can create a fence, right? Mm-hmm. that you can put chickens in. So we got 50 chickens, right? And so when the price of eggs went through the roof, hey, how many more eggs can we get from the farm? Right. And that goes to our dining services. But it was this idea, can we create this sense of, and none of us are completely self-sufficient. I mean, we're all connected, but can we create this sense of self-sufficiency, self-reliance, that's just kind of core to entrepreneurship? Like, how can you make this thing work and be profitable is sort of a value that's embedded in, in building out any business. And so we are standing up a farmer's market, because our campus runs along a major highway here in Mississippi. They get over 40,000 vehicles a day just rolling down that highway. Okay, how can we leverage that to, let our kids grow something, whether it's tomatoes or cucumbers or, the stuff that goes on our salad bar here, and then invite the public in to come and see it. And it'd be a process of kids figuring out, okay, how do you create a business plan? Okay, how do you create a marketing plan, right? And all of those pieces. And, do they want to stand up a website? And how do you put kids together so that they may say, okay, I'm pretty good at this side of the business. My classmate is pretty good at that side of the business. Maybe there's a way we can come together, right, and create something. And so it really is this this sort of process of immersion that you saw with these singing groups, that you saw what we've done in the sports piece, that you see what we do in agriculture. And that process of immersion is kind of what Will and I have been talking about in terms of doing a studio, kind of a remote studio here on campus. We started investing in one child. Our founder, Lawrence Jones, started teaching a young man how to read. Lawrence Jones, he was a rare Black college-educated man in America in 1907. Was the only African American to graduate his year from the University of Iowa. And but he knew the story of like Booker T. Washington, who had started Tuskegee and those places. And so he came here to reinvest in community. And he started teaching a young man how to read. He later would say that where a student and a teacher are seated upon a fallen log, because that's how they started, therein lies the school. And we've gone from that log. The guy that owned the land where that log sat was a formerly enslaved man who was born here in Mississippi. And after the Civil War, he got to go north and he did well in business. He came back, bought up land. And so he donated our first 40 acres of land, which included an old log cabin, a sheep shed that became the first schoolhouse of Piney Woods. And it became the home of Lawrence and his wife, Grace, Lawrence and Grace Jones, and the first boarding house for Piney Woods. And if you see this space, you say, how do y'all do all of that in this little log cabin space? But we've gone from literally a fallen log cabin, 40 acres that were donated through that, to now we have in our holdings over 2,000 acres of real property here just outside of Jackson, Mississippi. From Atlanta, we're straight out I-20. I get a lot of kids here from Atlanta, and we're not quite equal to Dallas. Is just a little bit further, but we get kids from that side as well. And then from Memphis or from New Orleans, we're kind of in the center of all those spaces, and so we've gotten a lot of kids from those spaces. But it's all been about what you just talked about with those kids that came from the Obama Foundation. It's all been about exposing kids to things they wouldn't otherwise be exposed to. If you grow up in Clarksdale, Mississippi, it's where Morgan Freeman is from, by the way. But if you grew up in Clarksdale, if you go to Clarksdale, Mississippi, you wonder like, why is anything here? But if you grow, and there are kids growing up there, right? And I've educated some of them, and it's like, you put them, we put them in some vehicles, and we've driven up to Chicago. We stop at Memphis along the way. We stop at St. Louis along the way. And we get them to Chicago, and we show them spaces that they, wouldn't otherwise see. And you begin to broaden their mind. You introduce them to professions that they wouldn't otherwise see. We have SC Johnson is one of ours, a company up in Racine, Wisconsin, just north of Chicago, is one of our sponsors. And they sent down a number of their corporate leadership to do a career day. And it was just SC Johnson Career Day. But the people that they were heads of marketing, they had a chemist on staff. They had just across the various facets of the company. So then the kids could then again begin to connect into, right? And then they said, well, we came to you, why don't you come to us? And so they brought us, we took 25 kids up to actually see their work in progress. And so that kind of exposure, that kind of immersion is the thing that makes, I think, the most difference in helping kids understand what skills they have to be able to contribute, but also, if you cannot see it, then it is hard to be it, right? And so when kids are in it and they can see it, and they begin to you take them to a college campus, and they see people, they're walking the same yard as everybody else on the campus, right? And suddenly they start to say, okay, well, I can do this, right? Otherwise, college is just for, I had the pleasure of going to Harvard. You're going to stop me in a second because as you can see, I get excited about this. I had the pleasure of going to Harvard University, in Cambridge, just outside of Boston, and this is for a graduate program. Did my undergraduate work at University of Chicago, but I was teaching in a middle grades class, 8th grade class, over in Dorchester, Roxbury area of Boston, and it is literally across the Charles River from Cambridge. Right, you leave that neighborhood. It's about 2 miles maybe. You go across the Charles River, and you're suddenly in Cambridge. You're at MIT. Mm-hmm. And if you keep going up Massachusetts Avenue, you're at Harvard, right? No kid in my class had ever been to MIT or Harvard, right?
That is unreal.
And for they've been growing up in this neighborhood for the last 13 years, and that was completely foreign to them, literally a couple of miles away, right? But worlds apart. And so how do we expose kids to all these kinds of things? I think that is I think that's spot on. That is the work that we've been doing since our founding, and again, that's why Will and I have connected around, can we do this in making movies and studio and the arts in that way. So anyway, so that's who I am. That's what we do. That's some of the passions that have been driving us. And so I can understand why Will wanted to connect us on this.
Spectacular, by the way. I mean, to do what you do is, that runs the world. That's what's going to make this next generation, not live under AI and do things on their own and learn in different ways. And, entrepreneurship's going to be different in the years to come. But if they don't understand what's out there.
Yeah.
And that's why I've fallen in love with sports my whole life. I could never play. I was horrible. I never played anything, but I knew, and I saw the passion in what you see. And as a father, it's exactly what you said. I'll pay whatever it takes. I can afford it. But even people who can't afford it will do whatever it takes if they think their kid's going to become, Michael Jordan or LeBron or anybody. And to me, it's those things are teaching lessons. At least with my son, who's, I'm only 5'8". He's not going to be a basketball star, but he is learning more from those coaches than, I could ever teach as a parent. He's not going to listen to me, at some level. It's those coaches, and it's everything that goes with it. And so I think one of the things is driving that. And this really core to who we are, what we do every day. Yeah, I talked a little bit about this morning. So we have this devotional time we do on the campus every morning. And so I talked to kids a little bit about this. I do a thought for the day as a part of it. And but it's just I think when parents see that, their children, their kid is like passionate about something and really invested in something, right? And this is, this is poor people, rich people. Nobody has a lock on this, right? This is everybody. If they see that level of investment that their child is making in something, they want to feed that, right? No doubt.
Yeah. And so I think that's what's really going on. That and so if we can tap into that, and of course, for us, it's tap into that in sports, but also can you tap into that in other spaces? That's what makes. The other thing I mentioned to Will was there's a whole pipeline piece of this, and so if Shaq's interest or others are interested in the sort of collegiate level piece of this, makes perfect sense to me. But we're also thinking about where are our kids going when they leave us? And so And we have a bunch of kids in Atlanta. I've got kids at Morehouse and Spelman and Clark. We've had kids at Georgia Tech and Georgia State University and all over the, when we took kids up to Chicago, when we took kids up to Iowa, we stopped at Grinnell College, University of Iowa, and Iowa State, and got a kid on a full scholarship at Grinnell College right now. And so we're always thinking about, how are we positioning our kids for where they will go next? And so I think there could be some pipeline discussions too about how some of these pieces might connect. So
yeah. I mean, it's just making it happen and trying to figure out, that's why I keep going back to the sports piece, because it is a $50 billion industry that nobody owns right now. Everybody's trying to get into it. Everybody's trying to figure it out. People are investing. All these billionaires are putting all this money in it. Nobody knows what they're doing, and nobody understands, to me, what one of the biggest ways it's going to work is through media.
Absolutely.
It's what's driven sports from day one, and they're all buying these facilities. They're glorified rental facilities, and there's all this other stuff that's going on that are just, nobody's taking advantage of.
I wanted to jump in and out on that. So Lenny, the way that Mr. Crossley and I met is through one of my best friends and business partners, Dean Hadley, who's an ex Piney Woods student, ex pro basketball player, now NBA agent. And his sports agency, 1010 Sports, is one of the things that's being merged in fully to Big Picture World Group. So we own essentially an NBA agency, right? It's a full ecosystem and the aspect of where this whole roadmap takes us, because then Jerry Easter Sr., who's our partner, who when Dean and I first met and Jerry and I first started working together, Dean was helping and assisting little Jerry because he was just starting his high school career. Now he's USC basketball starting point guard next year as a freshman, projected, right? And so we're all going to be out here doing this. And he was the blueprint. We founded Big Picture through basically the DNA path that little Jerry had in front of him for basketball. But we wanted to use a foundation to where if the stuff didn't work out in pro sports for every other kid that's not Jerry, right, it becomes this. But we're a walking case study between who the Easters are, what Piney Woods is, who I am in film, who Dean is, who then segmented because he didn't make it fully as a pro player, right? But eventually stayed in sports as an agent. It's all intertwined and interconnected. And that's when Mr. Larry Witherspoon here comes in. Because when Larry and I met, he brought the already active streaming platform to where, like, they broadcast the Arizona Bowl that Snoop was sponsoring, right? Like, we have the tools for what you're talking about and the roadmap that you want to lay out, what you want to do. It's all been assembled puzzle piece by each of us individually without us all collectively knowing through years what was happening. And that's why you get such passion from everyone and everyone actively engaged and jumping in on these calls with you from the first one, because seeing's believing, right? Everybody keeps showing up to these moments and these things I've been connecting together over the last 12 months. And it's all kind of fully aligned together at this point in time, centered around basically what these next upcoming dates are. But I just wanted to add that. And, all this is exploratory. And that's why I'm not getting pigeonholed on, oh, I can give this amount of money and that. And why I've been recording these Zooms, because, when I went out this summer, and this is all connected to FIU too, oddly enough. So my partner, one of our partners in basketball, Tymel Murphy, he plays over in China as an expat, right? He went to FIU. Lee Kaplan, who's a pioneer in publishing and started Penske Media Group with Jay Penske, right? Who started Deadline and owned Deadline and everything else. Lee is one of the most major philanthropist donors at FIU. He actually started the FIU film and media department there for college students. And then obviously your background. So today really was this connection between the two of you and you, Lenny, because it's also the stuff in pro sports, which is its own whole thing, but that's all very flowing forward as it relates to La Paz. And Piney Woods owns forever a piece of Big Picture World Group. And that's how forever we create an endless revenue stream as it relates to the future work Will and the school will be able to do with children, because they will forever participate and own not only a film studio, not only a sports ownership group, but basically, the casino that we're also building and intending to build in Mexico as well. And then that will be gradually expanded across the entire world, because we also have a hologram telecommunications company. So long term, over the next 5 years, we would have the ability to literally project Will or any other educators via a hologram all around the world, potentially in schools, right? From an educational standpoint. And I just know with what's going on in DC right now, with essentially the attacks on education, everything else, I don't know where this is all going, but I know Piney Woods, like Will said, has been around longer than the word school has existed, practically.
So guys, nice to meet you, Lenny, and good to see you again,
You too.
Will, and everybody that's on the
Hey,
call.
Larry.
Hey, I'm glad to hear you guys narrating everything, both Lenny and Will, that we've already tested and proven in the marketplace, and you're spot on, both of you, and how I'm going to hit some touch points, and then we can go on and with our day and do our calls and everything else. But my company, Connect Your City Lenny, currently manages 210 OTT TV channels and radio channels, streaming to 194 countries and territories, 24 hours a day, linear as well as on all the major fast platforms, Roku, all of it. But we control the distribution of content. We built the back end in 2006 when people told me, Forbes and Fortune magazines, that no one's going to want to watch TV on cell phones. And I proved them wrong, because I was building networks for ministries and they was watching TV. So when the phones weren't smart, I was doing live TV, radio, all that on cell phones, downloads and all of that. So what recently, as an outgrowth of what we've done with technology in sports, I decided when NILs became the focus, that we needed ownership. So we created name, image, likeness ownership for media. So we built Nilo TV. And with Nilo TV, we have taken that and worked with Snoop Dogg in this bowl with the STEM program, and took 100 kids around the stadium, showing them with not only with our production and television management and production and distribution and programming, 50 jobs related to sports at the stadium at the University of Arizona. And we took them around. They were fascinated because they were athletes, and most of them, like some of them weren't as tall as they should be, and all of, but they could see the different jobs in the stadium that they could also do, as well as create media, but creating ownership and owning your own television network, owning your own media production company related to sports. And then what's happening in the communities, especially in urban and communities of color, is parents are taking kids that don't have a clue or can't even walk straight and trying to get them into sports, because there's money in NILs with no education whatsoever. So the opportunity is not only there that you can own your own media, but you can teach these alternative, careers. So having Piney Woods be in position to do that, and having a NIL type education. We currently have NIL.university. We're teaching, parents and people what NILs really are, and then creating the Piney Woods type TV and marketing already in play, where you can begin to market without asking anyone to put your films on TikTok. Do it yourself, and showing people how from the entire supply chain, from production, curation, distribution to media ownership, can be done in Piney Woods. And because you're right next to a freeway, that same network that you already have can be used to create a digital signage network. Put a couple of billboards that's controlled by the students next to the freeway. All those things can help with Mississippi tourism, and all those athletes in Mississippi can benefit from an introduction to Piney Woods sports and entertainment studio and television and all of that right there, and increase, of course, the enrollment, the donor outreach. All that can be done. But we're launching a complete television platform for NIL sports. Every sports will be on this platform, and it will be donor based, community based. We're taking hometown heroes and having them go back to the local businesses and get them to support sports programs, and media in these local communities. So that's a lot. I wanted to make sure that I touched on the points, but we have the basis for doing it, and we don't have to wait at all because everything we've done is already in play. I'm getting ready to launch a channel with a legendary basketball league, the Rucker, in Harlem. So taking these community-based programs and educating kids on how they can make money in and outside of sports and the local businesses to do a social investment type strategy for NILs. Anyway,
And
that's what I wanted to put that.
well, I want to add on the heels of that because talking about the NIL is perfect. So, Lenny, I mentioned this briefly, and I've kind of assembled this together in conversations with Meta, because Meta World Peace has been one of my oldest friends in this business. Ron has, so he's our partner in this, right? And he and I were talking because he coaches girls basketball now, and so with the NIL capabilities that we have, plus also we're a massive brand incubator from basically a celebrity partnership standpoint, the founders of all this. I started playing with the idea of, wait, so what if I took an athlete and say like Mark Wahlberg, right? And I paired them to where you literally had everything from volleyball to basketball. So you would have Snoop be the commissioner of the youth football side. You would have Jermaine O'Neal and Meta be the commissioners of the youth basketball side, right? You would have teams in every market. I'm talking youth sports from ages 6 to literally, let's call it 17, right? And we would set up with brands and brand deals a full basically NIL thing, similar to what Gin and Juice did with the Arizona Bowl for the players that were playing in that Larry broadcasted. And we would literally do a youth professional, basically amateur league, broadcast all the games to monetize it, have everything set up like with actors and film, basically in film world that are under 18, to where there's a Coogan account. So every single player playing that's literally youth athletic is getting paid to play, because you're talking about at the standpoint now, right, from how much parents pay to play these things, and also the thing, and you've got kids that aren't going to be generational talents. I'd say 9 out of every 10 kids are not generational talents, right? But that one is. But you could create a world now, and this is done on such a high level, especially from an AAU standpoint. I mean, there's this kid called, I think his name's like Hoop God or something. He's this little basketball player. So his dad, who runs that league, one of our partners in our coffee shop here in LA, Derek, his son plays with that kid. And so that group alone out here in LA could already have their own series. I mean, that little kid's got like 1 million followers. So they want to be involved in starting this. So what I want to do, I want to take a celebrity, I want to take an iconic sports figure, multiple ones, and I want to have them coach these actual traveling teams, but create a youth professional league set up with brand partners to where the kids are being paid by like actual Coogan accounts in the championship winning teams and games, and say we have the facility in Lakeview, or we build something at Piney Woods, right? That's where we host the championship games every year. Ultimately, when Mexico is ready and we build a facility down there, it can be played there. But we do this traveling actual schedule, and we do it at a standpoint to where when the kids aren't in school, or if it's the weekends, you're the brain. This is some of what you've been talking about, but that's where I want to go with this. And I've already basically laid out a roadmap for that. It's in my finalized overview, the third one that I'll be sending out next week at some point. But we have the ability, because of Larry's platform, what he's created, plus where this is heading with everything we're about to be launching through the rest of this year with the film and TV stuff we're doing, to truly create the world's first amateur youth sports league that's on a professional basis, from not only sponsorships, but global broadcasting capabilities. And I'm not just talking the major key components, because if you look at right sports as a whole, this is what you talked about in that video I saw at Lakeview. you know, you've got everything from women's volleyball, that's its own market, that in certain literally analytical standpoints is doing crazy numbers. There's these, what they've been considered, I think, niche sports as far as amateur athletics go for years, are things that you can't like survive right on a professional level playing. Well, that's not necessarily the case anymore, based on brand deals and the global market and everything else. So this isn't just a standpoint, right, of me trying to go and make movies and so forth. I think what this is, with the way the world's become, and so many of these elements that we've kind of faced as a society over the last few years, from COVID to the threat of another, global war and so forth, there's kind of a new sustainability ecosystem being created as it relates to relationships, but also I think from an accountability standpoint, it's not lost on anyone. There's all kinds of connections from the left to the right politically that we're at the forefront of as the leaders in this thing. Like, truly, I mean, Will up there worked in the White House. My partner Jay Ivy's done poetry at presidents' houses. you know I set out last summer. I never intended to be involved in anything RFK was doing before he ran for president, right? It's weird, man. God has led all this to a connective standpoint for an accountability purpose as well, based on all the dark that's kind of gotten shaken out of entertainment and also sports. And I know I'm jumping around, but the monetization of youth athletics, because you said it yourself, if someone doesn't do it, someone's going to do it, right? We're at the forefront because of who we are, what we've done, and the legacies of everybody that have basically built all this to get to this point. And that's so much about what this is legacy. All anyone has is their legacy, right? At the end of the day, when you leave this world, whatever you did as a human being is what's talked about. And that's either, in the light or in the dark. And so that's what a lot of this is for me. When I initially launched Big Picture Collective, if you go back and you read that original Deadline article that was centered and focused on the Easters, I don't know where I got any of that from. The whole overview, the whole written thing, all the way down to Big Picture Collective, a collective of artists. This is bigger than us. This is family. We are legacy producers. That's not something I went around saying. It just kind of came, right? And I've come to understand we're the custodians of legacies, from literally Don having the Jackson 5 to Will being the custodian of a 115-year-old school. Tommy Bina, who owns the Canyon Country store for 40 years, their families own it for 40 years. That's the age I am. He has chosen me to be the custodian of that moving forward. And, that's where Jim Morrison lived and created iconic music, and Mama Cass lived in the basement. And that's a global brand. So that's our production company moving forward. Canyon Country Sauces, Canyon Country Cosmetics, it's a whole thing. So it's a complete seamless ecosystem that none of us, including the money we've been connected to, ever have to go looking for anything ever again, because we have enough capital from the people that I was led to via Mr. Lee Kaplan and FIU that we found the funding. And Don is where, those guys are. They're in New York, as is Joey Stanton, our head of talent. And so it's just simply, and that's why I reached out to you last night. I'm like, are you okay with me recording this call? Because I've gathered everything to give to Malka. And that's why I've stopped even talking about, let me get money for this person. That the funding's been here. It's publicly now in the press at $13 billion. You can go look and see Project Rise Partners, Moses Gross, pull up the Piney Woods School article. You see Moses and Malka in it. We just have to communicate with them and give them the information, and God's going to do the rest. I swear. So that's my 2 cents. Don, good to see you, sir. Thank you, Lenny.
I just wanted to add a couple of points real quick. So first of all, the last meeting we had with Mia, I sent my bio so you guys can look at that. It's a lot. I've been around forever, so there's a lot there. It's just one page, but it's a lot. What I did want to add to what everybody said, first of all, I can help connect you guys very easily, because after I gave up my sports marketing career, of course you never give it up, but after I got out of the corporation business with the sponsorships of every league possible, I jumped over to the college marketing side and put together an IM League platform, which is for the intramurals, the 2 tiers from flag football to 3-on-3 basketball at all the college and universities. So it's much like Naviance with the guidance counselors in the high schools and so forth to recruit for colleges. Same thing here. We use it to keep track of everything. We give them a free platform to all the colleges. There's over 950 colleges, and it's all about bringing the inbound student from high schools and recruiting them into the college and university. So I can help tie with that, as well as Special Olympics. We didn't bring up the inclusive piece of it that I read in Lenny's piece on the Shaq deal. I represent the Special Olympics, and they have 6.6 million athletes, coaches, and then on top of that, the volunteers worldwide. They're a great organization. They have great ambassadors from NBA to the NFL that donate their time. But that's a great inclusion piece, and that's kind of what I get involved with, helping with Nashville bring the U.S. Games to Nashville in 2030. So I'd love to be able to add not only the high school inbound for colleges, but the high school inbound for the Army. I also was hired recruited agent for 10 and a half years to Army, Navy, National Guard. So I know all about recruitment. So the other 18 to 24-year-olds, so we can go after that crowd because they would love to use this academy. And so if we include the Special Olympics and some of the other armed forces and so forth like that, I think we could go a long way. That's it.
Don.
Who said? I talk fast from New York, so
I love it.
I don't want to take up a lot of your time. But I check out the bio that I sent. I sent it to Mia. The first, I think we had a meeting, a conference call last. It was attached to that email, so it's somewhere in that thread.
My intent of what I want to do, and just for timing purposes, I know Drew was invited to this, but he didn't jump on. But I have a call with him later. So out of all of those pages I wrote and everything else, we've gotten everything very finally fine-tuned and narrowed in and concisely put forward into an overview for the next upcoming steps, which I just want to kind of wrap up by talking about. So the intent, Lenny, Will, and Don, as we've talked about, and Lenny, you're hearing this for the first time. All the IP for all the movies that we're funding, which I've put forward, and this was at the beginning of all this with Malka. 33 films, that's with intent, 33. Jesus, I can't help myself. 13 documentaries, 13 TV series, 13 animated pieces of IP to literally fund and launch all at once. When I set out to do this, I already had 50% production funding and equity for essentially any film project I wanted to go and make through my partners at River Rock Entertainment and a relationship that they have with this huge visual effects company that basically put together a film fund. And so that's what I went to operate with. That's half the reason why I drove cross country, because I was like, oh, if I can connect somebody, then we have funding. So that being said, all of those launch films, and there are global people involved. So for example, there's a project called Relentless about Vernon Turner, who was a special teams player for the Bucks and the Rams. I'm producing that movie with Dwayne Wade, Russell Wilson, Ciara, right? So like that's a launch title. There's a film with Vanessa Hudgens. There's a TV series we're funding. I'm producing with Aaron Rodgers. We're making Lawrence Taylor's biopic, Wolfgang Puck's biopic, etc. All of those pieces of IP are going to get paid for before this event would happen. And the intent and goal is on March 29th, all over the world, literally with our partners as well, like Wang Xiaoming, who's one of China's biggest stars, who's a movie star, who's starring in something I'm going to direct that we've put together. And I've been in conversations with his interpreter about, who's also mine. You see, I was given interpreters from China, Russia, Ukraine, all over the place so I could be an actual international filmmaker moving forward, because the dream was always to direct. So out of those 33 movies, 6 of those are being directed by myself with the producers that are behind me, which are some of the biggest in the world. So this is a whole pushing things forward. But on March 29th on Larry's platform, Lenny, we would do a 24-hour streaming event that would incorporate all of the members of Big Picture World all across the world, live from Atlantic City, where we've already been prepping, where Ross DePhil, Mark's partner, brought to the table a whole venue and space that we've lined up. And then we would have live satellite crews at the Canyon Country store in LA, Austin, Texas, Chicago, Illinois, Piney Woods, and at Full Sail, which is wild because your son goes there as well, where I'm an alumnus. And then obviously live from Atlantic City. I'm going to start in Atlantic City and literally travel to each location within that 24-hour period. And that launches basically who we are and everything we're going to be making. And then on Mother's Day weekend, the Big Picture World Love Aid, which is, you know, our global charity event that we announced before the fires and the tragedies and all of that struck at the beginning of the year, is going to happen on Mother's Day weekend from my hometown in Ocala, Florida, where Time Magazine picked the World Equestrian Center is one of the 100 greatest places in the world to visit. So we would start this year and hold a yearly Mother's Day musical festival for charity. Outside of the production costs, every single bit of proceeds go to global impact. And then we would go back there and do that again 4th of July weekend for the Big Picture World International Film, Food, and Wine Festival. And that's how we get all of the movies and all the content to launch the streaming platform overnight to decentralize all this because we're hosting an international film festival. So we're getting international submissions of content literally from March all the way until July. And then those films that have gone into production, some of them will actually be completed in that time. It can premiere at the film festival and then immediately debut the next day overnight. And David Womark and I have an upcoming meeting with Craig Dimmel, who is literally the head of global distribution for IMAX. The place where I'm staying to finish this whole thing, he lives across the street. We met randomly Super Bowl weekend, and he distributed Life of Pi that David produced. We're meeting with Craig to bring him in as our CEO of theatrical distribution. And he's at IMAX, which is an independent thing from Hollywood, but he's got resources within the whole distribution ecosystem at every major studio. And so that is the plan and the intent. So I'm wrapping all that up this week. So what I want to do on Friday, tomorrow, to close this out, I want to introduce everybody that's on this call directly on an email to CJ and Moses. And then we'll collectively just keep having these conversations and now with them because I have a data room to deliver to them. And I hope, Lenny, you're feeling good from just this call and some aspects of getting to know some of the other amazing voices that are me, because I am one leader amongst a group of many geniuses. And it's finally so nice for my life and my career to not be in a place to where I feel like I have to do everything because that's been what it's been for 20 years because I was never really supposed to produce. I had to sacrifice my dreams. I didn't even know I was doing it. And the sports ownership stuff and all this, that pathway got aligned because that was my end of life dreams. I'm like, when I make it in film, I'm like, I'll try to own a pro sports team. And see, I got given those gifts and those tools to do and those partners. So I would consciously wake up to what my original dreams were, which was being one of the best film directors ever of all time from a global impact standpoint to create a world for kids, man. I always used to say if somebody like me had existed, when I moved out here and did this, it wouldn't have taken so long. And now I get to be that person. I keep randomly walking around the world. I walked past a coffee shop and God's like, turn around. I looked, this couple was writing a screenplay. So I spoke to him last night, right? Shared a conversation, gave my email address. I could change those people's lives in a matter of months versus what took me 20 years. That's what it's all about for me, to make it easier for the next generation. And that's why I fell in love with Piney Woods and with Will. And I've just been so incredibly humbled and blessed to be not only given the land and the space and the partners to do this with, but the mindset to know that this has already happened and we're all kind of living in reverse, to be honest.
In the initial conversation with Will and Lenny, Will, you talked about parents being more excited about investing in sports. And Lenny, you talked about youth sports and how we can use it. I believe right there, there's immediate opportunities for Piney Woods with the collective assets that's on this phone and that Will Clevinger knows will set it aside from any type of NIL or youth sports education program because donors is going to keep Piney Woods open and being able to create some master classes where we have a collective of sports and agents come to Piney Wood and be able to teach these parents who are forcing their kids to get into sports that don't even want to play sports because there's an NIL divide. Not all communities have access to getting the type of funding that they need to sponsor the NILs, but being able to create a donor base based on all those athletes that are in Mississippi and in that region and having them focus on Piney Woods as being able to come and educate people about NILs and sports. No one that teaches NILs anywhere in the world has the collective assets that are on this phone. So essentially, it wouldn't be a normal program, but Piney Woods was a focal point for educating people about sports. Just with the people in Mississippi alone, you wouldn't need any more money for the rest of your life, Will, because donors will come out the woodworks.
Oh, yeah. No, I know. I mean, we have the ability to shape and shift the educational future path for many children in America, literally with this, truly. And what parent and family, right, wouldn't want to send their children to a place to where literally, they're seeing faces that they've known their entire lives. You know what I'm saying? Like that sells itself. It's a marketing ecosystem, the people that are involved. And, I mean, like, look, Lenny, your son, you sent your kid literally to where I went to college. You get it. There's not a place like Full Sail on this earth. So I wanted to create that in an academic setting that wasn't just for college, which Will's given me the opportunity to do at Piney Woods, and then literally build our own college because, I love Full Sail. I never speak ill of any other place or thing, but there's some stuff that they just don't have the ability to do because they don't have the ecosystem that we do, just point blank. Quite frankly, and I've seen it. This. They went and brought in Dan Patrick, right, to be the head of their sports broadcasting side. They got Dan Pat. That was like, this is, I mean, business partners in this are names that Full Sail would pay millions of dollars to come and market the school already. Truly. So
couple of quick things. Quick things. First, I want to say thank you to Larry because he's opened a channel for us, and so Piney Woods has a channel that's streaming through his through his network. And Larry, we're working. I'm working with the team here, so we're trying to get our content, get that fueled in and dialed in. And so, but appreciate you making that opportunity available for us so we can share what we're doing. I have kids from, I think, over 12 countries, 12 or 13 countries from around the world here. And so to have a space where people from their home, right, their whatever country they're from, can tap in, see some of what's going on, is huge. Because sometimes when they're calling in the middle of the night, right, because in Ethiopia, it's morning, and so we have some of that going on, and that's really awesome. And Lenny, it's been an absolute pleasure to meet you and to hear about your interests. I would love to stay connected and engaged on all of those pieces, and love to keep sharing with you what we're doing, working with some other partners really across the nation on this. And to Will's this point about what's been happening sort of traditionally in the education space. This is I think the system is broken already, but it's breaking under its own weight now. College is like so expensive. And so like we're getting scholarships for our kids because there's no way our families could afford this. But the the kid that goes to college for a year and then doesn't finish, is saddled with debt for I don't know how many years. And I mean, just the system as it's working is not happening financially, but it's also not happening in terms of actually preparing our young people for careers in the workplace. And so I work with, I work with corporate folk and employers all the time, people who are interested in workforce development. And most of them say, like, send us people with a good set of like skill, they're thoughtful, right? They can do critical thinking, and they have the executive functions, and they know how to, because the stuff that they need to learn, they're going to learn on the job, right? And they can read as many books as they want, but until they're actually on the job, they don't get it. I'm saying that to say that I think the time is ripe for something new and different, right? In the field of learning sciences. And AI is proving that the knowledge game is over, right? Nobody can keep up with it. You don't even need AI, right? Nobody can keep up with Google searches. If you want information, the information's there. And so that can't be the future. That's not the future. And so it is a really, really ripe time to be moving into a new space in education and learning. And so I'm really excited about the possibilities that exist for this work.
Amen. Totally agree. Everything you said is spot on.
Yep.
All right, Will.
This has been amazing. Lenny, thank you. We'll keep dancing, man.
Yep.
And keep pushing this along, and just thank you for the time. And Don, Larry, Will Crossley.
Yeah.
Godspeed, boys. Thank you.
I appreciate everything to everybody. I really do. Thank you.
Awesome.
Right back at you.
Take care, guys.
Blessings.
Take care, Dan.
Bye,
All right.
guys. Thank you for your time.